Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm going to talk about journey, actually, consumer journey, because lots of brands are on the voyage of discovery about the consumer journey, and I find that the big majority of conversations going on and talks and papers published are always talking about smoothing consumer journeys, moving consumers along the path to purchase, and talking a lot about fixing pain points. So hopefully I'll be able to tell you about something different, which is how we used consumer journey to capturing new growth opportunities. And I'll start with a little quiz. So if you think about the customer journey work, is it about smoothing the journey? Is it about disrupting the journey? Or is it about both? So raise your hand if you think it's smoothing the journey. That should be your priority. No one thinks that. Don't be shy. Raise your hand if you think it's about disrupting the journey. So most of you should raise their hands for C, unless they're asleep already. Good, because hopefully what I'm going to tell you is mostly the demonstration of why you should be doing both and why maximizing the value of customer journey work is about achieving both. And I was supposed to present this together with Guy Grimsley, who is Insight stakeholder at EMEA in McCormick. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it. When we did this project together, he missed flights twice. One day he was refused at the gate, the booking was wrong. One day he got a flat tire. So as I'm French myself, we have a saying in France that says when something happens twice, it will happen a third time. I should have known better. So he apologizes, and I'm going to try to do my best to cover for him. We did this project for McCormick on cooking and baking categories, and I have a next slide explaining you what these categories mean for McCormick if you're not familiar with the brands. We did a project for the whole EMEA region with their focus countries that are UK, France, Poland, and Russia. And if you're in a country that doesn't have the McCormick brands, here's an overview of what they are. At the top side is the savory, at the bottom the baking. So the savory in the UK, you'll know the brand Schwartz if you're from there. If you're French, you will know very well Ducros. In Poland and Russia, they use the brand Kamis, and it's a series of flavor solutions ranging from simple herbs and spices to meal makers that they have in all these markets. In baking, we're talking about all sorts of ingredients for baking, ranging from nuts and products to help you fix your cream, to completely ready mixes of chocolate cake or the very good Russian sirniki, or even decorations for the cakes. So McCormick has a great presence in France with the brand Vahiné, launched in Russia and in Poland with the brand Kamis, and we're not talking about the UK for baking. So this is to give you an idea of what we talked about. So it's interesting that our thinking about disrupting journeys is something we've used a lot with travel brands, technology brands, telecom brands, but not so much in fast-moving consumer goods. It's still a sector where we're not talking about journey so much. And in this case, we looked at how to disrupt and influence the journeys of meals, so the meal journey, or the baking journey, starting from the moment an occasion is shaping, like, oh, I've got to cook something for tonight, until the moment when the occasion is finished, the meal has been cooked, everything's been cleaned up, the picture is on Instagram, and it's got 50 likes. So that's the journeys we're looking at in this context. And the reason why this matters and why this is really important, and I talked about disrupting journeys, is because we have seen in our research that people tend to be a lot on an autopilot, you know. They have 10, 12 top meals that they cook all the time. Same thing with their baking repertoire. It's always quite the same. However, we see that when we manage to disrupt journeys somehow, so whenever people have changed something during their journey, for example, they planned to make something and then they changed the recipe or they changed some ingredients, whenever this happens, it means more category usage, it means more category purchase, it means more spend at the retailer, which is something that the customers like to hear. In this case, for example, when we're talking about cooking or baking, we know that approximately 1/3 of journeys have a change somehow. So people plan to do something and they change their mind, 1/3, that's quite a lot. And in the case of savory, it means plus 23% of category usage, which is really a lot. And in case of baking, it means plus 30% in the number of products that people use. So disrupting journey matters because it drives more consumption, it drives more purchase. And this is the reason why we focused on that. The other reason why we focused on that is that we realized when we were running this research, and this is a bit like us learning from our mistakes, is that initially we were hoping to find areas of unmet needs. And remember the quiz, the first was smoothing the journey. We expected to find some frustration, some pain points, some problems, some things we can do better. It turned out this was not really the area of opportunity. And when it comes to creating a cake, there are some pain points product related, but journey related, people are quite happy with the way the journey is going on. And there were some opportunities, but it was not that much. And we had to use other methods to find other sorts of opportunities that would lead to growth for the clients. So this is why we focused on the disruptions. And to understand how can we define what are these disruptions, how can we understand how we can disrupt journeys in a way that will influence people, you have to look at journey a bit like a game. You know, in any game, there are players, there are rules, so you can only move forward, you can't touch the ball with your hands, that kind of rules. You have limited resources. When you play Monopoly, you can't use the whole bank, you have to stick to what you've got, and there are winners and losers. And in the customer journey work, it's the same. The players are the brands, and the brands are trying to do something to the customer who is moving along the board game. There are limited resources. Unless you're a very lucky marketeer, you probably can't do everything, so you have to select which marketing initiatives you're going to prioritize. And there are winners and losers. But what are the rules? We need to know the rules to be able to do this. Many of us have probably been playing video games, you know, like the combat game, where like Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat, where two guys are fighting themselves. And the really good gamers, they know how to use their character. They know where to press to kick, they know where to press to jump and kick, they know which combinations of buttons you do to get the super magic powers with the fireball. And the rest of us, and I'm sure some of you have done the same as me, we're just pressing the buttons very frantically, just trying to make something happen and hoping that there would be a kick or something going on. So when it comes to journey, which brand do you want to be? Do you want to be the one who knows the rule and very peacefully knows what to do to influence people? Or do you want to be the marketer who just frantically spends money in marketing initiatives, hoping to get some return? So, thinking of the customer journey as a game. If you don't know the rules, you don't know where to place your bets. So we know our customers. This is a little animation showing a customer on their journey, very happy. And we as a brand, we want to sell them something, right? We want to influence their decision making. So there's lots of things we can do as a brand. We can do marketing initiatives, we can do digital, we can do shopper, we can do all sorts of communications. And what we want in the end is to influence them. So we can try, for example, we can try a billboard. Are they going to look at the billboard? Is this going to yield any results? And no, sometimes they don't even look at our billboard. It was completely useless. This is when our brand is just extra noise, when there's so much going on in the market that we can do a communication is completely bypassed by everyone. We can try something else, a bit more one-to-one, maybe an email campaign. And same thing, are they going to receive the email to open it? Bad luck, didn't work. Maybe we were not the right brand to do this. Maybe it was just the wrong time. Maybe it was not the right message. Sometimes your message can be the best, but it was delivered at the wrong time. So what we want to be, we want to get to a place where we know at which moment of the journey, which marketing initiative we should do. Maybe it's a sales team somewhere, just to make people really purchase this. So less gambling, more gaming, less trying to spend money somehow and see what's going to happen, but more gaming, knowing the rules, to know how to play it. That's what we were trying to do. This means knowing the rules. This means knowing the principles. So it's not just about hard data. In fact, it's about understanding rules and principles. And this is important for how we did this. This requires to identify the micro moments to target. And now the next question is, how did we do this? How did we identify micro moments? What do we mean by micro moments first? What we mean by micro moments, it's breaking down every journey stage into micro moments. So how people decide which recipe they're going to use, that's not a micro moment, that's a journey stage. And typically your journey stage will have 5, 6, 7 different stages, and we need to break these down into lots of different micro moments before we can decide which ones are more relevant to look at. So when people make a decision for a recipe, it might be because they saw something that sparked it. It might be because they have something in the fridge that they need to use up. It might be because a friend told them about something. It might be because in their morning commute, they read something in a newspaper that made them think, hey, I'm going to do that. But it might be also because the weather was really nice today and they thought, oh, I feel like having something summery. It could be when they pick up their child from school, the child says, hey, I had fish at the canteen, and you think, damn it, I can't do fish again tonight, I'll have to reconsider what I'm doing. It can be once you're in home, laying all the ingredients on the kitchen top, it can be whilst cooking, it's all of that. And breaking down the decision process to understand which are all these micro moments is the first stage. And then it's not any micro moment, it's the micro moments that matter. And the micro moments that matter, they're the ones where we can really do something. So this is a lovely quote from a consumer who said, for example, we haven't had chicken for a few days, so I took some out of the freezer this morning. That's what consumers do. After work, I popped to the store to find something to prepare it with, and a pack caught my eye with this crispy, delicious-looking chicken. I knew it couldn't go wrong. If you do qualitative research, you know that people never give quotes like this, so it takes a bit of analysis to put it back together. But what we see here, there's a number of success factors going on that makes that this is not just a micro moment, it's a micro moment that matters. First, there's an opportunity to improve the journey. So you know, these people, they could have been very happy with the chicken with a bit of pepper and salt, but there was an opportunity to make the chicken even better. So that's the first one. The second one is that people were open for disruption, and consumers are not always open for disruptions. There are moments when consumers say, just back off, I don't want to be disturbed right now, I'm doing my thing. And there are moments when they're actually very open to, oh yeah, let's have a conversation with the brand and see what else we can do. In this case, they were very open for disruption. The third success factor is that there's a brand here that has the means to disrupt successfully. They have a good product that's explaining the benefits really well, etc. And the fourth success factor is that it's a safe disruption, because no matter what happens when we disrupt journeys, we're talking about change. And when we ask people to change something, there is always a risk associated to change, and people don't want to take too many risks, so we need to help them to diminish the risk as much as possible. And in this case, having a very sensorially engaging picture on packaging would be probably sufficient, because they thought, oh yeah, it's going to be delicious, so it's not too much of a risk. But that's the way we think about it, finding micro moments and identifying those that really matter, because all the key success factors are represented in there. So how we did this? How did we identify micro moments that matter? I do apologize for the font that looks a bit funny on this screen. What we did is qualitative research. We did quantify it afterwards, but we needed qualitative research to be able to identify rules and principles. We couldn't just use data for this. And we used mobile self-ethnography for this, because mobile self-ethnography is great, and all of us who have used it know that it's fantastic to capture in the moment thoughts and to understand where people are on a journey, what's going on, etc. What's fantastic about mobile self-ethnography as well is that you've got a prompt for everyone to keep thinking about the subject all the time. And actually we did that self-ethnography ourselves as an agency, as client, and having this app in the pocket would prompt all the time and make people not only talk about their current journeys, but also remember past journeys, what happened every time we changed our mind, every time a brand did something that influenced us positively. And we would think, oh, right, because I see my slow cooker, now I remember something happened when I bought my slow cooker. So we all did this, 17 people from the client and agency team. We got 140 entries, so that's 140 disrupted journeys that we had captured. We did the same with consumers along with the standard online community diary style, but also using an app, and we had 14 consumers in 4 different markets. That's like an awful number of journeys. So we had more than 800 different journeys to look at. So then how do you look at 800 journeys to identify patterns and causality in what happens? And I wish there was software. Please talk to me if you know software that can do that and understand the why as well as the what. But what we did it qualitatively in this case. And what we did is looking at all these different journeys. So we had, maybe that's what a journey looks like, but we had 800 of them. And we used the same principle as the isolation training. You know, when you go to the gym, because we're all millennials, all very much in our athleisure in this room, so we all go to the gym and our trainer tells us about isolation training. That's when instead of lifting weight, you remove, for example, your leg, so you can't use anything else in your body anymore, it's just your shoulders working. And it's the same principle here, is to isolate variables from the journeys to be able to understand solely what's going on in terms of journey and journey disruption. So for example, we were working with need states here. It's very obvious that a journey differs a lot if you're putting a quick meal tonight for your family versus if you're preparing something really nice on Sunday because the in-laws are coming. It's very obvious. However, that has nothing to do with journey disruptions. It just has to do with understanding how the journeys differ for different occasions. So we put them together. Same thing for consumer segments. Every segment is different and they have different needs, and so their journeys look different, but that still doesn't help us to understand how we disrupt these journeys. So we put everything together. And then we divide these journeys into 2 types, the successful ones and the unsuccessful ones. And the successful ones, they're the ones, frankly, where people buy our product because that's what matters. We have commercial objectives, we have targets that we need to fulfill. So we look at the ones where there is a success. We look at the ones where there is no success. Maybe people cooked a meal and they didn't use any herbs and spices. That happens. And then by comparing these two, that's how we can identify what happened in these successful journeys that didn't in the unsuccessful journeys. And so what are the patterns, what are the elements, what are the rules that we can draw from this analysis? So this gave us a good understanding of what were the rules to play in the consumer journey game. And then the next stage was to put all of this together into a framework together with all the teams. So all the teams from shopper marketing, digital marketing, product marketing, brand marketing, everybody has something to take out of this. You're looking at all the micro moments that we identified. You're looking at different consumer segments. These are fake segments, they're not the real ones. I couldn't use them. But imagine just your consumer segments. And for each of these micro moments, we use the combination actually of the qualitative research we did, but also quantitative research, like robust data about what's happened, as well as ROI measures, etc., to create a framework that makes you understand when you play on certain micro moments, what is the likely impact that it's going to have for your brand. So maybe you can play on the micro moment number 4, but we see, oh, it's only with one consumer segment that it works quite well, whereas micro moment number 1 is very likely to influence purchase decisions for a large number of people. And because of having quantified the data, we know also the profile of each of the micro moments. We know what are the channels that people are using at this moment of time. We know what are the messages that they're sensitive to. We know what we need to do to be able to win. So this was great because everybody in the company got something out of it, all the teams, again, digital, shopper, everyone. McCormick learned a lot about, for example, impulse and convenience, which are not their traditional channels. So it's a stock building type of category. So they had some knowledge about impulse and convenience, but not that much. And this was bringing completely new and fresh thinking about how to do convenience and impulse. The other thing that they learned from it is also what things to deprioritize, because sometimes you have an idea, there's something, it's been there and floating in the company for a long time. We've never really discarded it, but we've never done something about it, and we still don't know if we should. And in this case, and I'm sure lots of other brands have the same problem, as for example, they were thinking, hey, we should create an app. What brand doesn't want to have an app? And every time there's a brainstorm about marketing initiatives we could do, create an app is always one of the outcomes. But in the case of McCormick, they had never got down to the level of, should we really do that or not? And if you really want to get to that level of understanding, it can be quite time and money consuming. You have to create a concept, you have to test it, refine it, quantify its potential, etc. That's a lot. They had never done this. But thanks to this framework, suddenly the answer was clear. No, we're not going to do an app. We would be just extra noise. It wouldn't work. It's not where we should place our money. So finally, they got the answers, not only of what they need to do more and do better, but also of the things they should just deprioritize and not do at all. So very rich outcome for them. And that's it, really. So once you look at your consumer journey as a game, it's about understanding the rules. Once you play the rules, then it's less gambling, it's more gaming and more winning. Where's the sun?
Thank you very much. We have a few questions again, but I'll just pick up one which has been thumbed all the way to the top, which is around targeting to a micro moment. So it's great that you can identify them, but the challenge has been put forward that perhaps there's millions of micro moments across a category or across categories for any group of people, for any brand. How do you, as fast as possible in a real-time way, or more generally, how do you use the information you're gathering and then translate that to action so that it makes a real difference to a brand?
Yeah. That's a good question, and I think the framework that was on the screen is really the answer for this, because it's about prioritizing. It's about knowing we can't play everywhere, we can't do everything, so what do we need to do? It takes one day, just to put everybody together in the same room and agree on that. And once that's done, it's very obvious, it's very easy, and we can just go back. If someone has a challenge, we can just go back to this. Look, we all agreed on this. The criteria on how to choose the micro moments, it really depends from brand to brand. And for example, for some brands, scalability of solutions are very, very important. So for example, you've got one consumer segment where there's one micro moment that's very magic there, but actually it's not going to yield enough results if we develop something just for them. So we should better focus on something that works across segments. But it might be that that segment is really your future segment where you're focusing, and you say the growth need to come from these guys, so then you decide to prioritize it. So the criteria for prioritization, they depend on a company. We just need to agree on them, but the framework is the tool to use to get there.
That's great. Emmeline, thanks again.
Thank you.